The Atlantic Ocean's marine currents, which are crucial for regulating the global climate, are changing because of climate change. These alterations could have very serious consequences, especially for the Northern Hemisphere. To understand what's happening and how this could lead to long-term disasters, we need to talk about the AMOC. The AMOC, or Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, is a giant system of water flow in the ocean. Think of it as a huge conveyor belt with two main phases. The first happens in the South Atlantic, between South America and Africa. There, near the equator, the sun warms the ocean's surface. Winds carry this warm water to the North Atlantic, towards Greenland and the Arctic. The Gulf Stream, an essential part of this system, passes close to the east coast of North America and distributes heat to these regions. This transfer of heat from the equatorial areas to the colder parts of the north is fundamental for the Northern Hemisphere to have milder temperatures and be habitable. The second phase of the AMOC occurs near Greenland. The intense cold and dry air in that region cool the water and separate the salt, which turns into ice. The remaining water, still liquid, becomes extremely cold and salty. Being very dense, this salt-rich water sinks to the ocean floor. Over thousands of years, this deep water column moves to the South Atlantic and spreads to other oceans. In summary, the AMOC works like this. Warm surface water from the south is pushed by winds to the north, and cold, salty water from the north sinks and returns to the south. This circulation guarantees a significant part of the global climate balance. But the problem is that climate change, which is accelerated by our carbon dioxide emissions from burning fossil fuels, is affecting the AMOC and could cause its collapse. The cooling process in Greenland tends to decrease with global warming. Furthermore, the melting ice in that area makes the water less salty and therefore less dense, causing it to sink less. This shortens its return path to the south, potentially interrupting the AMOC's cycle. Evidence of this is emerging. Since the year 2004, several measurements show that the AMOC is weakening. Climate researchers at the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul have already warned about this trend. In the last 2 decades, scientists have noticed changes in the average temperature of Greenland and the Arctic. Other groups are monitoring the speed of water flow and the depth of this exchange between warm and cold waters. These monitoring efforts cover a very short period of time. Longer records would be needed to understand the AMOC's long-term behavior. Reports from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, did not predict the AMOC's collapse for the 20th century. However, the topic resurfaced in 2023 with the publication of an article in the journal Nature Communications by the University of Copenhagen, Denmark. The authors estimated that the AMOC's collapse could occur as early as this century if carbon dioxide emissions continue at the same rate. They even suggested a time frame. The shutdown could happen between the year 2025 and the year 2095. But it's important to note that not all of the scientific community accepted this study without questioning it. Professor Penny Holliday, from the UK's National Oceanography Centre, stated in 2023 that there is no solid proof that the AMOC has slowed down, although she admits that the possibility of alteration exists. Meteorologist John Robson from the University of Reading, UK, also believes that the projections for the collapse's timing are still very uncertain. If the AMOC stops functioning, the consequences for the climate would be severe. Even if changes aren't as sudden as those seen in fiction films, the long-term implications are concerning. There would be a cooling of parts of Europe and North America, as warm waters from the South Atlantic would no longer reach them. Periods of drought in some areas and floods in others could also occur. In Brazil, especially in the northeast, changes in rainfall could affect the Amazon, accelerating the transformation of parts of the forest into savanna. The equatorial region of the globe would suffer from rising temperatures and ocean levels, endangering islands and coastal areas. Sectors like fishing and agriculture would also be impacted. Despite uncertainties about the speed of these transformations, associate professors at the Oceanographic Institute of the University of São Paulo emphasize that many of these environmental and climate changes are already being observed and are linked to climate change processes. These systems are very complex and can generate different impacts on society and the economy. This isn't something that will only happen in the future. We can already observe some effects today, and the trend is for it to worsen over the next 10 or 20 years, she adds. The most effective way to reduce these risks is to drastically cut carbon dioxide emissions by reducing the use of fossil fuels. Although changing the global energy matrix is a complex structural challenge, it is the essential path to curb global warming. Tim Lenton, a climate scientist at the University of Exeter, UK, expressed concern, stating that the effects of an AMOC collapse would be so abrupt and severe that adaptation would be nearly impossible in certain places. However, Joel Hershey from the UK's National Oceanography Centre points to more urgent concerns. The rapidly rising temperatures we've seen in recent years and the associated temperature extremes are a more immediate concern than the AMOC shutdown. Warming isn't a hypothesis, it's already impacting society now. Global warming is a reality, and its impacts are already being felt. The big question is, what will we do about it?